Voice AI has a problem that its product market fit is actually creating. So right now the market for voice is about $3.1 billion. But in 10 years, that's going to skyrocket to $47 billion. That's a compound annual growth rate of 38%. Now, there's some really big numbers, and clearly there's a great product market fit there. So then what's the problem? Well, the technology is so good and the competition is so fierce that the industry is commoditizing itself before anyone actually figured out how to make money from it. So I'm Blake, and I've spent the last 10 years in tech advising companies on their data and AI strategy. I'm here to break down for you the most interesting moves that all the players in AI are making. All the products, the moats, the distribution tactics, everything is curated so that you can stay informed. Today, we're going to be diving into the generative voice technology. We're going to follow the moves that the upstarts like 11 Labs and Synthesia, what they're doing to countering the threats from big tech. You're going to see why this battle is pretty much like every other battle before it, and you're going to see why the winners in the voice AI market are going to be the winners. So let's get started. Every major tech player is throwing around serious resources into voice technology. Twilio, Google, OpenAI, Meta, so much money has actually been poured into the space that prices have collapsed over 70% in one single year. But they're all facing the exact same problem. They have absolutely no idea how to charge for it. Now, to know why this is such a problem, we're going to have to go back 2 whole years and ages in AI. Back then, voice AI was just an experiment. The latency on voice was terrible. The voices sounded pretty much robotic, and it felt like a novelty that was never going to work at scale. But then something shifted. You see, OpenAI released the real-time API. 11 Labs, they perfected all the emotion in speech. And Google started bundling voice into every single product that they had. Suddenly, the technology actually became genuinely usable, and the voices sounded indistinguishable from a human. Now, go see for yourself, try out 11 Labs after watching this video. It was obviously a big deal. Voice AI venture funding, it jumped from $315 million in 2022 to $2.1 billion in 2024. Now, that's a 7-fold increase in 2 years. And to VCs, that's a dream industry. It's a new platform layer. And in fact, Y Combinator's fall 2024 batch was 22% voice companies. That's the highest concentration of any technology to date. The billion-dollar valuations, well, they started showing up. 11 Labs hit $3.3 billion. SoundHound went public with a $1.2 billion bookings backlog. And on paper, it looked like the beginning of a new era, the dawn of voice. But here's where the story turns. The adoption accelerated faster than anyone expected. The problem is that the supply side also commodified the market in real time. Here's where it gets really interesting. Now, pricing used to be so simple. You paid per minute. That was the model. But as the underlying technology got cheaper and more companies entered the space, all the competitors started racing to the bottom on pricing. The prices dropped from 30 cents per minute down to 7 cents per minute in 12 months. Some vendors now charge under 10 cents. And one report has actually said that the price per call has dropped below 10 cents altogether. That's a 70% collapse in one single year. Now, the economics shifted completely. 11 Labs and all the other voice vendors, their cost structures couldn't move as quickly as the pricing did. They have employees, R&D, infrastructure, but unfortunately the market doesn't care. All the new entrants came in. OpenAI, they released their real-time API, and suddenly all the developers, they can build voice agents natively. They don't have to license someone else's technology. And Google did the same thing. Meta acquired Play AI. Microsoft built an in-house voice agent. Now, the complete moat in voice, it disappeared. The leverage, it vanished, poof, overnight. All the companies, they stopped differentiating on voice quality because the baseline got so good. Now, it makes sense. When most use cases require maybe 80% accuracy and 95% naturalness, the difference between 11 Labs at 99% and a generic provider at, say, 94% doesn't justify 3 times the price. So the customers, they defected to the cheaper options. The volume went up, but the margin went down. Vendors, they cut pricing to maintain volume. Then the cycle repeated itself. Now, I think the smoking gun was when 11 Labs CEO in late October 2025, when he spoke at TechCrunch Disrupt, said that his own company is going to be commoditized within 2 to 3 years. Now, that's the CEO of one of the most advanced voice companies in the world, predicting that his company's main business is about to become a utility. Now, I think they're being tactical here. He knows what's coming, but here's what he also said. In the short term, models are still the biggest advantage, which means that 11 Labs is aware that maybe in 18 to 12, 24 months before the moat evaporates, they still have that advantage. And after, whoever's built the infrastructure layer and has locked in the relationship, they're gonna win. And everyone else is gonna fight on the prices. I truly believe that the best AI companies are the picks and shovels of AI. The infrastructure layer, the one that all the others are building on top of. It's not shiny, it's not sexy, but it's so important. Now, this pattern isn't new. We've seen it before. It's the commoditization playbook that applies to pretty much every infrastructure technology that goes mainstream. LLMs went through it. Image generation went through it. Databases went through it. The cycle is always the same. Someone builds a breakthrough, everyone copies it. The undifferentiated stuff, well, it becomes free, and in the near term, the value shifts upstream or downstream. The question is whether voice value actually lives in the infrastructure layer or in the voices itself. The 11 Labs CEO comment kind of gives us that answer. He says that they're moving from being a model supplier to being a platform. They're building applications on top of the commodity voice layer in order to differentiate themselves. That means that they're betting that the real moat and the real value is in the speech synthesis. It's in the integration layer, the reliability, the use case specific tuning, and of course the outcome measurement. Now think about it from an enterprise perspective here. Your CFO, he doesn't care about model quality. They care about the cost per resolved customer service call. They care about lead qualification accuracy. They care about handoff rates to human agents. They care about compliance and data privacy. A commodity voice model that does its job at 1/10 of the price, it's practically a no-brainer for them. But building that into your workflow, making it reliable, measuring ROI, integrating into your CRM, training on it, your data, that's still valuable. That requires work and it still commands margin. So the value proposition, well, it basically inverts. First generation voice companies like 11 Labs, they sell voice quality to developers. Second generation voice companies are going to sell voice applications to enterprises. That's where the margin is. It's not in the synthesis, it's in the outcomes. Now, this is the classic pattern of platform consolidation. Remember when Chrome won the browser wars? See, nobody's talking about Chrome rendering engines anymore. Everyone just assumes that that's a solved problem. The value moved to the integration layer, to the data collection, to the ecosystem. Same thing is happening with voice. The model commoditizes. The platforms, they capture the value. The implication is that the companies that are betting on pure play models are in trouble. But the companies betting on vertical applications, outcome-based pricing, and enterprise stickiness, they're pretty well positioned. That's why SoundHound pivoted to the enterprise vertical solution model. That's why Rasa and Conversica are adding domain-specific voices. That's why voice infrastructure becomes less important than voice orchestration. So where does this go? Scenario 1, I believe, is the most likely case. Voice models continue to commoditize over the next 18 months. OpenAI, Google, Meta, they keep releasing free or cheap voice capabilities. Open source alternatives mature. Prices flatten to about 5 to 7 cents per. And the margins on pure voice supplies collapse to basically zero. All the companies like 11 Labs, they succeed or fail based on their ability to pivot into these applications and be the application layers. The smaller voice vendors, well, they're going to shut down or get acquired. Scenario 2 is if regulation actually enters the picture. Right now, voice is mostly unregulated, but if governments start requiring licensing for voice synthesis, caller ID verification, or synthetic voice disclosure, then all the cost structures change. Compliance becomes a moat. But that's unlikely to happen fast enough to matter for the next 2 years. Scenario 3 is the one that actually nobody's talking about. What if voice doesn't become a standalone product at all? What if it just becomes the interface layer baked into pretty much a larger platform? See, Microsoft, maybe they add voice to Copilot, or Salesforce, they add voice to Einstein, or Apple bakes voice into pretty much every device. Then the voice technology isn't sold separately. It's basically a feature inside something bigger. That's the most likely scenario as well. In that world, being a pure voice company, well, it becomes strategically impossible. You either get acquired and they fill a gap in a larger ecosystem, or you pivot to owning your own vertical application. I don't think there's going to be any independent voice company in the future if big tech decides that voice is actually core infrastructure and worth keeping in-house. So what does this all mean? Well, infrastructure commoditizes always. The companies that win aren't the ones that are going to go build the infrastructure first. They're the ones that are going to build on top of it while it's still expensive and then figure out how to do the relationship side when it gets cheap. 11 Labs is being honest about this. It isn't panicking about commoditization because they're already on the pivoting journey. They're executing the two-wallet strategy. Now, I talk about this strategy in depth in my deep dive below. They're not a voice company anymore. They're actually a voice platform. That's the difference. A voice company sells synthesis. A voice platform, well, they sell outcomes. One's a utility and the other one is actually a business. The other lesson is that adoption speed is eating margin. When adoption accelerates, well, the pricing pressure is always going to accelerate faster as with it. You can't plan for that. You can only prepare for it. The companies that they succeed knew that 24 months ago, that was coming. They started shifting their whole business 2 years earlier. The companies that get surprised are the ones that believe their own narrative about model quality, where it matters forever. The framework is actually quite simple. Infrastructure commoditizes, applications retain value, integration retained value, relationships retain value. But synthesis alone, well, it retains nothing. And that's the reality of technology adoption in 2025. So don't be sad for voice AI. It actually isn't broken. It's working exactly as it's supposed to. Breakthrough technology, it gets expensive. It becomes crucial, it gets cheaper, it becomes a utility. The companies that build first don't usually win that utility phase. They either pivot, get acquired, or exit. 11 Labs is pivoting, Google is integrating, OpenAI is building, Meta is acquiring. The only thing they're not doing is selling voice as a standalone product in 5 years. That's not a market, it's a feature. So if you're building with voice technology right now, it's actually the best time. The cost is at that inflection point. It's cheap enough to be economically viable for lots of use cases, but it's not free yet. So there's still a 2-year window to build something proprietary on it, on top of it, before the whole thing becomes free and basically baked into everything. After that, your window closes. You're basically playing defense against Microsoft and Google and pretty much anyone else who has embedded voice into their core platform. The race isn't to commoditize the fastest. The race is to commoditize before someone else monetizes what you built on top of it. The commoditization playbook doesn't stop with voice. It actually moves to video, it moves to reasoning, it moves to agents. Every platform layer is going to follow the same path. Right now, the companies that understand that play are executing the two-wallet strategy, and they're the ones that are going to still be relevant in 2027. The companies that see it first are the ones that are going to win. Hopefully this was useful. I'm Blake, and if understanding how AI reshapes competitive advantage is interesting to you, I post regularly on YouTube and deep dive at blakerowley.com. Thank you so much for watching.